Our conversation with Rita Gekht is sponsored by the Embroiderers Guild of America at egausa.org. One of the true strengths of the EGA is education. If you want to advance your skills or learn a new technique, classes are available to EGA members at all levels. One option is individual correspondence courses, which offer EGA members intense, personalized study under the supervision of teachers selected for their outstanding needlework skills and knowledge. Current options include a basic study of Schwalm embroidery with Barbara Kershaw, Introduction to Metal Thread Embroidery with Kay Stannis, Rainbows Bend, a course on color theory with Carol Renard, and Techniques for Canvas Embroidery with Diane Herman. Another great set of classes are the lightning rounds, found under group correspondence courses. One option is Finishing with Flair with Marion Schooler. It's a notebook course that covers 3 useful techniques for finishing needlework and instructions for lacing a needlework for framing. Act quickly on this one, though. Registration ends July 31. Also consider Mark and Paint on Canvas and Fabric with Laura Smith, and Perfectly Counted Crosses, a sampler design course with Carolyn Standing Webb. You'll find these and many more opportunities under the education header on the EGA website. To take advantage and get more out of your needlework, join the EGA today. It's the best thing you can add to your stash. Thanks to the EGA for sponsoring this show, and now our conversation with Rita Gekht. In addition to this podcast, join us for the Fiber Talk Stitch Hour, July 24 at 8 p.m. Eastern. Rita will join us live to give us a tour of the New Hope Arts Center and the current exhibition. Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr.
And I'm Beth Ellicott.
And you are listening to Fiber Talk, the twice-weekly podcast for needlework artists. This week we're weaving with Rita Gekht. Rita, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, boy. Oh, this is not normal weaving either.
No.
Yeah. This is special. So Rita's Dream Studio is her studio, and then you do an awful lot of work at the New Hope Arts Center, and we got to learn about that too. So, all right, the biggest question is right out of the gate. You start in computer science, and you end up an artistic weaver. What happened?
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
I'm trying to make this interesting and short. So
take your time. It's all right.
Take my time.
Yeah.
Okay, picture 1979, a 17-year-old girl from Kiev arrives in New York City. And the only thing I know about myself at 17, that I'm good at math, right? Mathematics, that's it. I apply to NYU, I get accepted, I get enrolled in computer science programming because that's related. I can barely speak English, but I can understand numbers. So there it goes. I'm learning, I'm taking calculus and linear algebra and all that good stuff. But back in the day, the computer people sit in the underground in the fluorescent lighting cubicles, and it's not much fun at all. So towards my senior year, I was fed up, and I said, there must be something I can do to enjoy myself. And and there was an elective class with Michelle Lester, who was teaching macrame and tapestry. It's like, there's something entirely different. I'll do that. And, short of it is it changed my life in a little bit more details. Computers and weaving apparently not that far apart, as I learned, because the first computers were actually looms. In 1801, a French merchant and inventor, Joseph Jacquard, designed a loom for fabric weaving that used what we would learn later became punch cards, except they were made out of wood, but the same principle. It's alteration of zeros and ones. It's picking different things at different times, and that invention revolutionized the weaving of fabric. And that same invention was used to design first computers. They have a lot more in common than I thought.
So
But I
so
think
then so then the leap to weaving was really not that big of a deal, though
no, it's actually
it seems
yeah,
to us like a huge thing.
no, it was
Yeah.
actually going backwards to the beginning of what computers started with. Key punch holes, the little cards we used to stack up, which is at my time at NYU, that's exactly what we did.
Yep.
I went
Oh,
back to the
I remember my when I went to college, I had a roommate who was computer science, and then no, only a few people really realized what that was. Those stacks of cards, and
exact
he dropped them once, and it's like,
all the
oh
time. Yeah, and you
yeah,
get them out of order, and everything gets screwed up. But they had that element in common. It's thanks to the loom inventor, and that's how computers started. Interesting. But I think some of it actually has to do with the way my brain worked.
uh-huh.
That numbers made sense, zeros and ones made sense, alteration made sense. It's like, okay, but what came into my life versus computers is the experience of touching the fiber, the fabric, the colors, the manipulation, the what I consider loom as a string instrument, because it has vertical strings basically. And instead of just brain, all my seven senses got involved, and it's like, wow, that is something. That is
Yeah.
really. And then an unexpected thing happened. Michelle Lester, who was my teacher, invited me to her studio and asked me if I would apprentice for her. And I was flattered and floored. And how could I say no? This is something entirely different. And that was the beginning. And
So this is your senior year, so you pretty much have computer science wrapped up. Did you
yep,
finish it off?
I sure did. Not only did I finish it off, I ended up working for IBM in White Plains, New York, in the
Uh,
accounting department of all things. But all along, I knew that is short lived, that I have to move on and go to arts. And I had to ask my father, we immigrants came with nothing. I said, Dad, give me 5 years. If I have no talent, I promise you I'll go back to computers and work in the corporate world till I die.
oh, there's a conversation to be a fly on the wall. Hey
Mhm.
dad, I just got
Dad,
this degree, but
can I please not use it and go to
Yeah.
art school now and learn how
Mhm.
to draw and learn how to, create compositions and all the things that I haven't learned. And my father was very generous and understanding and said, okay, 5 years, that's all you get. But I never looked back.
never did.
No.
Wow,
Wow.
wow. So backing up, did you have any kind of an art background? I mean, was there anything in your childhood that said art to you?
Probably. I like making things. I like playing with things. My mother would crochet, knit, and sew, and I would make sculptures out of sticks. As a child, I think it was more a play, and it was fun. But once weaving came along, that's when I went crazy. I started just gobbling up all the knowledge I can possibly get, and I thought the best way is to go to art school and
Ah,
fill gaps. So Parsons was the first thing. So composition, design, color theory, all of those things that were missing, I just, yeah, sucked
Well,
up.
my question is, so did you have to apply, didn't you have to apply to Parsons? I mean, I don't think they let just everybody in.
They don't, and that is correct. So what happened is that in that year, I gave myself a year while I'm working for IBM at White Plains. I am creating my portfolio to apply
Okay.
to. So I'm taking classes at Art Students League of New York, School of Visual Arts. They could take just elective classes and build up a portfolio. And in a year, I was able to quit IBM and get accepted into Parsons.
Wow.
So that was a push. I was 25. That was
wow. So you worked hard when you weren't working for IBM. You were working hard to be able to achieve a level to get into Parsons. Wow.
correct. I had to create a convincing portfolio that they would let me matriculate as a freshman. I already have my degree, but here I am with 18-year-olds, you know?
Whoa.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I was determined. My father gave me 5 years. I couldn't waste a minute.
Right.
Wow. So
And
this did it come? It must have. Some of it must have come naturally to you to some degree to be able to do that in a year. I mean, there had to be something internal that allowed you to accomplish that.
I'm hoping so because I actually feel that fiber arts tapestry had chosen me. I wasn't out there looking for it, and it found me, and I just had to comply and do my best. I still continued working at Michelle's after I quit IBM and went full time to Parsons. So she was still my teacher and mentor, and Michelle had an incredible setup. It's a huge studio, 2,000 square feet in Chelsea, in Manhattan, probably 7 or 8 looms, and about 20 to 30 people would work with her, creating her pieces. It was an incredible environment of uh, weavers from all over the world. You know, every country, you name it, we had them.
What was
And
it
that,
about fiber? What was it about fiber art that drew you? I mean, because Parsons, I'm sure there's more painting and sculpting and drawing than you can shake a stick at. So what was it about that?
well, the interesting part, in the 80s, in 1985, 86, Parsons had a fiber program, weaving program. And Michelle was also a teacher there as well as NYU. And I said, well, I'm weaving. I have to learn everything I can about weaving. And in addition to taking, all the standard composition, color theory, and so on. So, but weaving became the core because that's how I was introduced, if you will, to the arts. And the question remained and still remains, okay, talent. I could be a technical weaver, which means I understand everything about it. I can do beautiful work, but am I an artist? Can I draw? Can I design? Can I bring into weaving not just the technical element, but the artistic element? And that was my challenge. That was something I needed to feel. But weaving, the fiber was it. There was never a question. And from that point on, it was never a question. It's like falling in love.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that can work. That can work.
Yeah.
So Parsons, you finished that. How many years was that? A couple years?
Well, I kind of decided what I was
You're on
missing.
the fast track. You got
Yeah,
5 to work with.
I was missing the foundation, right? I was missing the foundation of the arts, art history, all of that. I didn't need another degree. I just needed to fill in the gaps so that I can be educated in the arts in a way that I can develop my own way. So I stayed there for a year. I said, that's good. I'm
Oh,
moving on.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
then it was at Michelle's studio where you developed your style and your approach.
Very much so. Very much so. Because learning from her, Michelle was an incredible artist herself. Yes, she was a weaver, but she was a watercolorist, a painter, a jeweler. I mean, you name it, she was a Renaissance woman. And I could
Hmm.
see her create this incredible artwork from nothing, rendering, cartoons. I mean, she was just an all around artist. And not only did she inspire me, she taught me. I found things through her that
Yeah,
I can teach myself.
yeah. And for people who are watching, when we talk weaving, most people think of rugs and wall hangings, that kind of thing. But what's behind you there on the wall, that's the art that you're creating with
Yes,
a
Right.
loom.
yes, some of it. It had 40 years now. I can actually see 1984 till now, 40 years of practicing, developing, learning.
Right.
What gets you to Juilliard? Practice, practice, practice.
Right.
I would I cannot overstate it how important that is. But the style evolved, but the interest remained kind of consistent. Architecture was always something I wanted to be, I guess. But the fortunate thing about being a fiber artist is that I don't need to get permits of occupancy once I build my constructions.
Yeah, that
That's nice.
detail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
exist without that, and the colorful and the interesting. Music was always a big part of weaving for me because of the rhythm, because of the melodies, and I kind of feel the same way about weaving. Tapestry weaving is very specific. It is a image-driven form of weaving, right? So it's not just repetition of patterns or using, practical application of multi-harness looms, which is always very technical. Um, Tapestry is an image-driven form. So as well as you have to be technically good or excellent if you can, you also have to be able to design and draw for tapestries. And I have something I'd like to show you just to give you an idea. So I have a drawing here in front of me, which is 30 years old. It was one of the first largest pieces I did on my own without Michelle. It was inspired by the City Hall in Toronto, right? The architecture of the City Hall, which I altered. So it looks like,
Yeah.
let's see, like this.
Right there is good. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, this way. Okay. So yeah, it's buildings. I decided to put some water, some bridges. They're not originally there, but there's a piece. And then let's say 25 years fast forward. Here's a design for the next set of tapestries that I completed 5 years ago. So artistically speaking, definitely a change. Interest the same, but execution and quality of the line composition and so on changes as hopefully we evolve.
Yeah. For audio people, we'll put those pictures up so you can see them. So I used to edit, actually for many years, edited a magazine, trade magazine for architects. And in that time, I really came to appreciate, because when I started, it was, okay, these are guys who design buildings, big deal, who cares? I'll edit the magazine. But I really came to learn what it's art. It's just art with big buildings. And then when I saw your work and saw then how you take that art and make your own art, and the vision you must have when you see buildings. I mean, I can imagine you walking around a town with you're just gawking at buildings all over the place.
Absolutely, take lots of pictures and then kind of work with the images. And in architecture as well as in weaving my designs, it's the relationship between the shapes. They
Yeah.
all depend on each other. They all lean on each other. They all build one on top of each other. And weaving in by its nature is very much like that. You start from the bottom. You can't just start anywhere like a painting. You can start at any point. You start from the bottom and you go to the top. And if you screw up halfway there, you have to take it all the way down, fix it, and go back up. Yeah.
Well, and I was just thinking that's kind of like the computer science. You've got to you make a mistake in the middle, you're going to find out at the end, and you have to go back to that middle part and fix the computer science. And to me, it does make sense that you have the computer science and the weaving, because I think you have to think ahead when you weave, don't you? I mean, you can't just like painting. It's kind of a little bit more. You have to think ahead a little bit, but you can kind of cover it with more paint if you need to, but not with weaving. You've got to take that out and redo it, right?
Only if you make a mistake, and that's why there's a lot of preparation to start a piece. So you start basically with an idea, right? Then you
Right.
do design, sketch, watercolor, pastel, pencil, whatever it is. And then there is an element, if you probably noticed, there's called a grid. I'll show you another piece here. And on this piece, you see there's a red markings. That's the grid that I put on the design. And then I create what's called a cartoon. It's a literal translation of the outline of the piece into its life size. So, definitely mathematics helped a lot because I could life size cartoons. And then you use that cartoon to create the work. So you have a guide, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you do, well, you have to better fix it right away because there's no opportunity later.
All right. Okay.
Now, when you started weaving, what was it? Conventional tapestry, rugs, wall hangings, just standard stuff? I mean, do you have to start there And then how did you branch into what you're doing? Because some of those pieces that I saw of yours, where you actually have open space and just amazing. It'd be fun, so much fun to sit and watch you.
Well, started with Michelle, who was a tapestry artist and weaver, and Michelle came into situation from a huge commission from Pan Am Airlines back in the day. They commissioned over 500 tapestries for their airplanes.
Oh,
Took her 5 years to complete the project, and they were had to be treated in a certain way and so on, and the designs had to do with the Pan Am logo. So that's how she started the tapestry studio in New York. I learned the tapestry first, and then more of a conventional weaving through harness loom, just to understand the other principles and other things. So the tapestry was always beginning for me. But then as you get older, and you experience, you said, okay, I have the foundation. Now I really want to dance, right? I got my moves, and now I really want to now I want to dance. And that's when no, not just new ideas, experimental element of weaving comes in. Open warp, shaped pieces, um, three-dimensional application of weaving, becomes more sculptural, more experimental, and some experiments work better than others.
yeah,
But that's how you keep it fresh, right? That's how you continue finding things that in every element, it is a challenge, it is a learning experience, and it keeps you going. So for me, it was bringing the actual elements of architecture more so into weaving, creating shapes rather than having a flat tapestry, which is what usually traditional tapestry is. It's flat.
right.
So that's where I'm going. I'm going with this new ideas, new directions, using what I already know. And, you have to know the rules in order to break them.
Right,
So now
right.
I give myself a permission to break the rules.
Was was there some moment or some building that triggered this, that said, "Wait a minute, I need to branch out from traditional tapestry"? What tripped the
It's
trigger there and made you
such a,
go?
Gary, such an excellent question. Number of years ago, I was making a tapestry for a friend, a client. He was a psychiatrist, and he wanted a tapestry in in his office with couches and so on. But on the wall where the piece was going was a return fan, right, for the heating and air conditioning, and there was a frame, basically metal frame with slats, but the tapestry could not cover it because you need the flow of air. So I designed a piece. I had to design a piece that had open warp, open spaces to allow this flow of air to happen. It was a necessity of a commission.
Uh,
Once I started doing this, like, wow, look at that. Look at that structure within a structure, open air within the composition of pieces. It is on my website and people can see it. And that was the very first piece that I made that was not traditional, that was with experimental element of open warp.
so the old necessity is the mother of invention. It
Absolutely.
comes into
Absolutely.
play. So that
Yes.
then I got to believe that once you saw that, then a pencil comes out and you just start trying all kinds of things just to see what happens. You know,
Ab-
that old question, what if? What if I do
Yeah,
this?
what
What if I
if?
do that?
what if I do this? And as I said, some experiments work better than others. So once you open up the warp, it's like, what about I make it three-dimensional? What if it just breaks away from the flat surface and starts going forward or back or up or down? But, you know, and the good news with architecture, I have the best excuse, right? Because architecture is like that. So if you use the imagery of architecture, there's a building that has the height or has a depth. In the tapestry, I can bring that right into it. And
No.
you have to have a reason, you have to have a meaningful reason to walk away from the flat tapestry and make it three-dimensional or open warp or whatever. And buildings was my in. That's how I get in there.
Yeah. Did this also involve developing new technique, or did a lot of that exist and you were just able to learn it?
No, no. Totally digging, jumping in the water and learning to swim. Was making it up as I went along, for sure.
Okay. All right.
Uh-huh.
Because I didn't know what the term was, but the pieces where there's open warp, I mean, there's weft above and below, and how do you stop that from slipping down? And
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
that was what I started wondering. All right, how did she do that so this doesn't get all out of shape when you move it?
Exactly. And as I said, that was a total experiment. And sometimes, there's stages, right? You do the design, then you weave, and then you finish the piece. Well, in that piece that you're referring to, the finishing work was probably a lot longer than actual weaving, because you
Ah,
have yeah, you have to figure out how to keep it from falling apart. Because when I cut off that piece, it looked like a pile of spaghettis. And and how do you give it shape? How do you get it back up and make it do what you need? Reintroducing the tension of the warp and reintroducing the horizontal and vertical composition and interrelation. So yeah, it was an interesting learning experience.
wow. Oh, I'm just envisioning over 40 years the amount of pieces that we'll never see that just didn't work out, but you learned something and able to apply it
Mhm.
to the next time. I bet there's a ton of that.
Some,
Some?
not a ton. As you know, tapestry is probably one of the slowest art forms.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. So the commitment of time that it requires. Yes, I have my practice loom where I kind of, throw a few ideas together, see how it looks, what it does it need. But once I commit to a piece, I don't know, could be months, sometimes years to finish it. You better make it work.
Okay.
Well, that brings up the question. So, how many looms do you have going at a time? Do you work on one project or you work on multiple at a time?
Sometimes they're multiples, especially if I get a commission. So I have what's called a Glimakra loom. It's a Swedish design loom. It's a beautiful piece of equipment. I just love it so much. Then there's what's called a frame loom, which is basically a square or even two parts of it on the wall with nails, and all you can do is just put the warp on it, so it has no mechanical element to that. So there's two, and there's like three mid-sized looms, and I had to go back 40 years because my weaving at Parsons involved Leclerc, which is a multi-harness loom.
Okay.
And it's like, well, it's a secular uh, nature of life. You come around in cycles, and you got to get to the beginning, but on a different level. So I got a hard.
Oh, boy.
And I know they take up a lot of space, and that's why I asked. I was like, oh, how many looms does she have? And
It does get a little tight in my studio, but I
okay,
feel, not an analogy, just for fun's sake. I feel a studio is like a woman's purse. The bigger the purse, it would always fill in with stuff. So
right.
what you have to do is learn to work efficiently in the space that you have. So a lot of my things are either collapsible or movable, so I can set up a 10-foot table for finishing work or for a class or for something else. But I decided I am committed to 300 square foot studio space, and it has to all happen there.
Can't blow out a wall and build more, huh?
Nope,
Okay.
nope.
No.
The only thing I have, which is a little perk, I have a balcony. The studio is in Lambertville, New Jersey, and it's right on Bridge Street, main drag in town. And the building is 1850. So I have a balcony that I can step outside of my studio. Through the window, I can look inside. And that gives me the perspective that I'm missing just having extra space.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, buildings are your foundation. Do you find yourself as time goes on experimenting with other subject matter, or have you not yet explored buildings like you want to?
Well, I don't think I could ever get bored with buildings, but I do want to show you another design. So I do like to work with commission work. It's
Mm-hmm.
paid. Somebody is interested in your work. They have maybe other ideas, what they want. So people have very strong opinions about artists and commission work. In full favor. It's still my work. It's still something I contribute. I like to work with clients and understand their interests, their needs, and also, make it interesting for me. So I'm going to show you a piece. Had nothing to do with buildings. This is probably a 2-year-old commission. As you can see, yeah, there's way. As you can see, has nothing to do with buildings. But
Right.
here's the shaped tapestry, right? The top of it is all curved. It is not rectangle, and it's actually three-dimensional. So the leaves on the top come out maybe 2 or 3 inches away from the flat surface of the piece, and the trees are there's a yarn that's basically hanging off the trees, which is just like it would be in Florida when you have this beautiful moss hanging off. So there's a lot of my personal interest in exploring the texture and the depth, even if its subject matter is very different. So that was an interesting challenge, and to
Yeah.
figure out how to solve it. So I did, and that commission now lives in Florida. So even if I'm not with buildings, I'm still learning. I'm still trying to get away or explore the way to work with a traditional medium, but in not a traditional way.
Yeah. So that carries with you even today, where it's just always see if you can find a new avenue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How do you keep your marriage fresh? And I consider my relationship with tapestry, with creativity, with inspiration, a marriage. It is a relationship. To keep it fresh, you got to keep finding new ways of expressing it, of doing it, of working it. I think that's the answer.
Yeah. Talk about doing commissions. It seems it's a fascinating thing to me with commissions because you're an artist. You create what comes out of you, the way that it comes out of you and expresses you, and then someone comes along and says, "I'll pay you X to create this, but I need it within these parameters." And the psychology of how do I create art yet satisfy a paying customer, to me is an interesting challenge.
It is, and that's why so many artists don't go that way. They feel it's a compromise. It's too much of a compromise,
Yeah.
and they don't like to be told what colors they need to use or what subject matter they need, or it is an uncomfortable place for a number of people. My experience has been that, as I mentioned, I look at every piece as a challenge or a lesson of some sorts. So parameters changed. It's not a building. It's a landscape. The colors are limited. I look at it as an exercise and a challenge in creativity and finding my way through the limitations that have been imposed by a commission. However, it doesn't stop me from having my own voice in it, from bringing in what I have to bring in. And maybe it doesn't look like my other work, but my signature, my handling of the material, of the rendering, of shading, texture, that is still me. And
Okay.
as I tell you, it's a good thing to have paid work.
Well, yeah,
Well,
that never
Yeah.
hurts.
well, and I think sometimes artists will do something. They'll do like a challenge, some sort of like 100-day challenge, or they'll challenge themselves to use a limited color palette. All you're doing is someone else is making those parameters for you,
Correct.
and you are challenging yourself within those parameters, which I think is brilliant.
Beth, you got it. That's exactly how I look at it. I don't have any animosity. I support it. I actually like to work with my clients as an interactive relationship throughout the process. I would send them updates, images. I would send them questions. So there is a relationship that builds. So they don't feel they're just adopting a child.
Mhm.
They really had something to do, yeah, with raising, with
Right.
bringing the child to life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and I would think it would help you grow as an artist also because maybe you're challenged by this piece and you're like it might spark something like, oh, that's what I need to do on another piece.
Exactly, exactly. So the composition I showed you earlier of a diptych, the clients wanted to have graffiti in the design. Well, I'm not a graffiti artist. I don't even know how to draw graffiti. So, yeah, it was a big challenge. I had to, take YouTube videos, check it out, understand the principle, figure out how it's done, and put that in my drawing. And would I ever do it for myself? Absolutely not. But I had to make it work. That is exactly what you were saying, Beth. It's a challenge that I wouldn't have discovered otherwise.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I can see now. I'm starting to see how it expands your horizons. Then, and yeah, all right. It takes forever to do woven pieces when they got to go out the door.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like like? I mean, it's not like a child, but I mean, is there a psychological "I can't let this go" thing?
You know what? It changed over years. I remember my very first sale. I made this little tapestry. I was so attached to it. I was so proud of it. And somebody saw it and said, I'm going to buy it. $500, no problem. And when that piece left my hands, I felt, oh my God, I just have such a problem with this. I don't know if I can do it. So, yeah, so I turned
That
around.
would be tough.
So the piece was maybe like, 2 feet by a foot and a half. I turned around and I recreated the piece in the scale of 7 feet by 4 feet. Much bigger, much better. And I cured my separation from the child, so to speak. But but that was my very first separation. But over time, in this 40 years, I learned a lot. And one thing that I learned is that I look at weaving for myself as a process art, meaning what I get out of it is the actual process of creating it, right?
Okay.
Once it's completed, I'm done. I got out of it what I have to learn, what I can feel, how it made me develop and explore my own self, my artistic relationship. When the piece is complete and finishing work is done, I'm done.
You're
It's
done.
gone. I'm
Okay.
done.
Yeah.
I'm done. No
Yeah.
more.
Because I can imagine that moment where, okay, $500, sure, I'll take your $500 and you can have the piece. But there's got to be just that split second where that $500 is meaningless. It's like, wait a
Correct.
minute, that's my art.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. But you know what? That was my first sale, and I was 26 years old. And
Oh.
yeah, it was a lot of sales and commissions since then. And there are failures. There's still some pieces that I feel like, wow, that was a turning point. That was really special. I have 2 kids, and I said to them, well, listen, pick a piece, it's yours, but everything else, hands off. If something means something to you, yeah, everything else has to find another home to live, and I'm okay with that. I loved it long enough.
So did you take that check and go to your dad and say, see, I made it?
I said, this is my first sale. I'm officially a professional artist. I get paid for what I created. I did it.
Oh,
Oh,
great.
man.
That's good. That's good.
The parent perspective of going through all that,
Yeah.
degree where you can get a solid job at that time, IBM, I
Yeah.
mean, that's the
Correct.
crown
I was set,
jewel.
I was set for life. There was a culture. IBM had a
Right.
culture. You get a job and you work for IBM for the rest of your life.
Right.
They support you. They take you there. You become an IBMer. It's a clan. It's its
Right.
own universe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And didn't work. Didn't
Yeah.
work. Had to break
No,
that.
I mean, I remember at the time I was editing a magazine for research scientists, and I did a lot of work with IBM. And oh yeah, you talk about a culture. I mean, that was,
Very strong.
yeah. And once you got a job with them, boy, you didn't leave it unless you had a really good reason.
Here's a great story. So working for IBM, and I don't know if you know, back in the day, in the 80s, there was a called percent for the art. So all the corporations, especially very wealthy ones, were required to spend a percent of their operating budget on art, encouraging that. It was sort of like a big program set up. And 80s benefited tremendously. The fiber art benefited so much from that. IBM was one of the greatest collectors of artwork. Michelle Lester, my teacher and mentor, and I called her my art mother, alone had 32 pieces of her work collected by IBM.
Wow.
Wow.
collected in their galleries, their conference rooms, their buildings all over the country. But if you live long enough, you see something interesting. So IBM, about 3 or 4 years ago, decided anonymously, very quietly, sell off part of the collection of their art. And I live in a town that has a Rego auction house. It's a national, international auction house. And that's the venue that IBM decided to use to sell off part of their collection. And the moment comes and they come up with a catalog, and I'm looking at this tapestry in the catalog, and it has my name on it. I said, wait a minute. I did weave it. I did manage the studio, but it's not my work. It's only 30 years old. And it was Michelle's tapestry that I managed as a manager of her studio back then for 7 weavers to weave. I recognized the piece. I know what IBM paid us to commission that work. It was $7,000. And I called the auction house. I said, listen, you got to change all this. Yes, it's not me. It's Michelle Lester. And so I got the piece. I got my hands on it. It was auctioned off. It was purchased by a client that I brought in. I said, you have to buy this piece. You just have to. It was 40 square foot, 10 by 4.
Oh,
It got
smokes.
Right. It got into my hands, and I just felt like I was hugging an old friend. I remembered, to this day, I can tell you the sections I wove, my own handwriting, so to speak. And I gave it all the love I can, hugging and finishing it off and installing it to client's house. And what a reunion, you know? It was so,
Yeah.
yeah, so
Wow.
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's still that connection, even
Oh,
over other.
always
Even
here.
30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, take us to the New Hope Arts Center. Tell us that story.
I'm glad you're asking. New Hope Arts is the love of my life at the moment. No, it is. It is.
Your current love.
It's a current love, but it's a commitment that I will not waver on. So New Hope Arts is a wonderful regional art organization that is been in existence, I would say, 17, 20 years, near 20 years. And I can't tell you what it does for the local artists is incredible, but it's also a regional and a national venue. And New Hope Arts has reoccurring shows that they have every year. They come back, like Works in Wood is probably like 17 years old. You know, it has grown. It has become this beautiful exhibition, very prestigious. People love being there. And when I first walked into New Hope Arts, and there was some years ago, the director at the time, who was the founder, and I asked her, do you show any fiber work? Fiber artists. I'm a tapestry artist. Can I show in there? And said, well, we love it, but, right now we don't have any exhibitions that show fiber work. Fast forward to today. I'm a guest curator for New Hope Arts. I curated already 3 exhibitions of fiber, and I intend to make it, if I can, annual. And I love it so much. I feel like I am a very fortunate position as a, seasoned artist to be a ambassador for fiber. I can actually allow to open this door for new coming artists, for people who just dealing with learning, exploring, as well as seasoned artists who can lead the way and encourage to show them what can be done. And that unique opportunity that I had started about, I guess, 5 years ago, I feel privileged and committed to do everything I can to keep that connection going, because I did not have those opportunities when I was out. But if I can, I want to, and I will.
So are they juried shows?
Well, the first 2 were invitational. I certainly knew enough people in the fiber community that I could invite and show this incredible, mostly tapestry work. And this third one that just opened up June 29th, it's running through August 18th, is a hybrid. We have invited the artists who've been already showing with us and who I know they're my anchors, that people who work I follow, encouraged, and admire. But we also created a opening for juried work, for people. Let's just see what's out there. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. And we got a good response. Not excellent, but good, because it's the first juried exhibition we ever had. We got about 20 artists out of that. And yeah, so this is what we're doing now. I think I'd like to continue that way, because what happened at the opening reception, this newly growing artists, they came and they saw the work of, let's call them masters of their craft. It was such an inspiring thing between the new and the old, between the, you know, professionals and mature and developed, and people who get inspired by that work. And that's how it should work. You know, it really should be both. There is room. And I like that idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives them a place to show, and yet it helps them to grow as an individual artist.
Correct.
And I would think the new people might even influence those who are already established, with maybe they have a little bit of new ideas, just that interaction that happens when you get artists together.
Exactly. Because if you want to stay an artist, you got to keep growing and changing
Right.
and learning. As adults, parents teach the children, but they also learn from them. And the same thing goes this way. You have artists now coming on that, yes, technique is important, but they have different kind of approach ideas. And I think it's the most important thing, this interaction of the community of fiber people, that sharing the experience and sharing the energy of the youthful, not knowing how.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So tell us a little bit more about New Hope. Is it what kinds of things, if I walk in the door, do I see? I mean, obviously, I would only go to see the tapestry. I mean, that's a given. But give us what is it that we need to go see there otherwise?
In the town or the New Hope Arts Center?
The art center, yeah.
Arts. Well, first of all,
I can find a restaurant. I just I want to see the art.
You can definitely find a restaurant, a drink, and music. It's a very, New Hope and Woodstock developed about the same time for the same reason. There are a lot of artists influx that came there in the 70s. And it became an art community in the very same way that Woodstock, New York did.
Okay.
Very similar. And so there's this culture of creativity, and it goes way back. Actually, it didn't start there, but it became kind of put itself on the map. But it started, with Hammerstein. We have so much history in New Hope of artistic, Leon Redbone lived in New Hope. I mean, there's so many people who come from this area. I think it's in the water. It has to be. That would drink. Anyway, but the building itself was originally a theater. So there's a stage that still exists in the Garen's Theater. It still exists there. Just recently, the main gallery is on the second floor, so you have to climb very steep stairs. And we were fortunate enough to be able to raise enough funds and renovate the building. So now we have a handicap elevator. You can actually go on the second floor very easily in comfort and style. But the building is beautiful. It's a typical Bucks County. It's a stone building. It's gorgeous. We kept all the beauty of it. We just opened it up a little bit more. And then you come to the second floor gallery space. Being a theater, we have a tremendous lighting system installed, right? So you can have that interesting, very tall ceilings. I think we're going probably 25 feet at least. And yeah, it's very, very cool. And the black ceiling, because it was a theater, all the hardware disappears. Lighting on the artwork, beautiful windows around, and the walls. It's not a sleek contemporary gallery in the way, but it's big enough space to put quite a bit of work in there. Large pieces as well. And then this exhibition, for instance, has a piece that's suspended from the ceiling. The piece itself is over 10 feet, and it's suspended maybe another 10 feet off the ceiling. So it's just a sculpture floating in the air,
Oh, my.
Yeah, it's a very cool, beautiful, historic, and yet funky in some ways. It has that character of surviving all these generations of creativity. And yeah.
Oh, that's great. And I love when old buildings don't get torn down for steel and
Right.
glass.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right. So the community came together. We got a grant from Bucks County Tourism to support this particular show, but there's the senator of in Pennsylvania. So there was a lot of money that had to come together in order to
Right.
renovate and not shut down the building. You can imagine.
Yeah.
There's other
Yeah.
ideas in there. I think the community is fantastic. We treasure that. Like we get it. You know, that's what makes us so special. That's why New Yorkers come to visit New Hope. That's why people from Philadelphia, Princeton. It's a destination. You know, you drink, you eat, you look at art, you listen to music, you walk down the river. It's a we call it New Hope Riviera. You know,
Yeah.
it's a riviera. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. That's one thing I learned from the architects, because preserving these old buildings is oftentimes very difficult, especially if they're historical structures. It gets expensive. You've got the community board of historical structures you got to deal with, and all those things. And so a lot of times people just tear them down if they can because it's easier. But
Yes.
to preserve the beauty of the architecture and the construction quality, and then, like you say, you have unique spaces to hang art that you can't get in a steel and glass structure. It just doesn't
No,
exist. It's just a
doesn't
box.
have correct. Doesn't have
Yeah.
that character. You know, it helps that the mayor of New Hope, who has been mayor for a long, long time, he's on the board of New Hope Arts. There's so many people who understand the importance. And this new exhibition, one of my interests was to involve the students, the community, the New Hope Salisbury High School. And the assistant superintendent created a crochet club. And I said, well, you know, we need the new blood. We need the new generation to care about New Hope Arts. So an idea that came to me that do a collaborative community outreach element of this exhibition where the students, the teachers, the community artists all get involved. And what we're doing over the course of this exhibition is crocheting around 6-foot ladders. The ambitious number is 21, and this 21 ladders will be put together in a construction, in a structure that will keep expanding while the exhibition is up. And we every weekend, I'm telling you, it's so much fun. Every weekend we have a community activity, right? The kids, the teachers, the students, the adults, everybody's coming together. We're creating this multiply crocheted, beautiful, colorful ladders that I'm attaching into a sculpture. It will go to the high school so the kids who are participating can actually look at it and say, wow, we did this.
Mhm.
And ultimately, we will auction off piece by piece all 21 ladders to raise money for New Hope Arts. But it's so much fun. It is so
Excellent.
great. So there's a new generation. There's the people who's like, oh, we don't even know what New Hope Arts Center is. I was like, are you kidding? Come,
Oh.
come, join
Yeah.
us. You are
Yeah.
our
Hmm.
future. Or, you know, you have to be involved. So now they are. And I love that.
That's excellent. So that touches on the other thing I wondered about you. Michelle Lester changed your life for all intents and purposes. Have you been able to pay that forward and
Mhm.
make a difference for others?
I want to do more. You know, I
Okay.
don't think I've done enough. I really want to do more. And part of it is my relationship with New Hope Arts, my advocacy on behalf of fiber art. Uh, but I think I can do more. And that's sort of what drives me. I am in that position. I can share and support, you know, through experience, through artistic creativity. Maybe I will not become Michelle to someone else. But even if I find one person, I
Hmm.
would feel, yeah, I would
Yeah.
feel that
So
I
that's on the
fulfilled.
horizon then, or at
It
least.
definitely is. Definitely.
Oh,
More
that's
teaching,
so good.
more hours. Yeah. More
Yeah.
encouragement. More
Right.
encouragement for the people. You know, don't be afraid. Don't get discouraged. Don't freak out. Get through it. It's okay. Don't give up.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. What is your as an artist? What is your work day like? Do you keep regular hours? Do you have to? I mean, there's administrative business, I'm sure, that this has to be done. But do you have it like? Are you a morning person when it comes to creativity? Is it late at night? Are you 2 in the morning? How does your art work?
You know, it's interesting you asked me that question because from the beginning, from that very first ask from my father, I felt that I have to earn my privilege to be an artist, right? That it's not something that's necessarily given or gifted to me. I have to continuously prove that I'm worthy. So, as an artist, I had to do many other things to support my art. And I always felt like I was like the precious time that I get to create, to weave, to be in my studio is still very precious. But I am involved in many different things that supporting me as an artist. Unfortunately, I'm not a full-time self-supporting artist. I have to do catering, you know. Starving artist needs to have food. Okay, there's a catering career. You know, I do senior care for people who need companionship. So there's a lot of different things I do. And therefore, as much as I would want to be disciplined and have a regular schedule, I don't have it.
Right.
Sometimes I go to the studio, you know, after work, it's 7 o'clock at night, and I'll stay there till 1 in the morning, you know, and that's okay because I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, that hasn't changed.
Okay. Well, that's all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
So the studio separate from your home?
Yes. Oh, that's why I called it. You know, one night I had a dream. I woke up in the middle of the night. I had a dream. I had my own studio in Lambertville. And that's been my dream all my life. It's like I finally gonna get the place where I can create. I can just go there, close the door, and be this surrounded just by my work. And I had that dream, and I said, "That's it. This is what I'm doing." And I called it, and I got the studio, and I called it Rita's Dream Weaving Studio
Oh,
because
that's
it
where the name comes from. Okay.
exactly. It's not because I'm so dreamy. It's because I literally had a dream that I have my studio. And I had to make it happen. I had to make it happen. I saw it in my dream and I said, that's it. This is where I'm going. And therefore, so I've been to this location now. It's my 8th year. I started out with a studio in Frenchtown for about a year and a half. There was a very large space, 2,000 square feet. It was way too big.
Whoa.
This is manageable. Yeah. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
So you have a place where you can set the looms up and they can just stay there. You can just,
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
that's the
I could
Oh,
best.
be
nice.
dancing naked with my yarn, and that's perfect.
Don't send a video of that. No.
Okay.
No, 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 no,
No, we won't do
absolutely
that.
not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Well, Rita, this has been what a treat and what
Yeah.
tremendous art. Oh boy. People go to her website, look at her art. It is
Hmm.
like you've not seen. It is just gorgeous from stem to stern, really beautiful.
Thank you.
And and you
And thank you for allowing me to share my path. And I hope this encourages other people to not give up and just to keep going and whatever it takes, you know, a little at a time, a lot at a time. It is so, so important. I feel that this is the best therapy that life has to offer.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so
True.
much, Rita, and thanks to everyone for listening.
Thank you so much for having me.